has stated that gas would continue to be a significant part of the country's energy source until 2030. He made this disclosure at the Society for Petroleum Engineers Nigeria Council 2023 conference recently held. Komolafe further revealed that although the federal government is still committed to fulfilling the United Nations 2060 zero-emission goals, Nigeria would keep exploring its bountiful gas resources. Komolafe also noted that the government was hoping to accomplish part of the objective through the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Limited Train 7, Nigeria, Morocco, and Ajaokuta gas pipeline projects. The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, and the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, BPSR, have signed a memorandum of understanding to work together so as to accelerate the process of digitization of federal government processes. At the signing ceremony held in Abuja, the executive vice chairman of the NCC, Professor Umar Dambata, stated that the MOU would increase efficiency and productivity as it sufficiently captures the role of enabling policies and implementing institutions, which are vital features of digital transformation. All right, let's take a look at our markets now. Yesterday, the Nigerian exchange witnessed the market activity reversal as the all-share index surged by about 12 basis points, closing at 64,267.36 points. And this rise was driven by a high demand for consumer goods and banking stocks, with 32 gainers and 26 losers on Wednesday. Market capitalization we saw came up with a notable year-to-date growth of about 25.40%. The top traded stocks in terms of volume were Transcorp, FBNH, and ETI, while the top three stocks traded by value were FBNH, Zenith Bank, as rates dropped as the open buyback rate closed at 0.93%, while the overnight rate closed at 1.36%. The Treasury bills market yesterday reflected mixed sentiments as average benchmark yield closed at 6.24%. Meanwhile, the FGN bonds market portrayed a relatively bearish session, with the average benchmark yield settling at 13.30%. The FGN Euro bonds market continued its bearish sentiment as the average benchmark yield inched about 26 basis points, now 0.26% higher, closing the day at 10.19%. Now, at the I&E window, the value of the naira to the dollar strengthened to 741 naira 64 kobo to $1. If we move over to the United States now, futures were slightly changed on Wednesday as traders contended with Fitch's recent downgrade of the United States long-term rating, while European markets opened lower this morning as investors continue to access earnings season and await the Bank of England rate decision today. That will be in the next few hours. The BOE, which is the Bank of England, looks set to hike rates as it continues to tackle a sticky UK inflation. For the Asian Pacific markets, they were mixed this Thursday as Wall Street witnessed a sell-off after a downgrade in the United States long-term credit rating. For gold, futures held near three-week lows on Thursday morning after an unexpected increase in U.S. private payrolls in July, fueling bets on more monetary policy and bond yields. Spot gold rose to about $1,937 an ounce, while oil prices in early trade this morning rose slightly as markets weighed bullish U.S. inventory data on Wednesday. Brent traded at about $83.47 a barrel in early trade. All right, that's it for the business news as well as the markets. Let's quickly take a break, and when we come back from the break, it will be time for us to delve into the agenda for today. We'll be looking at businesses. How are businesses really thriving, or how are businesses doing? Not really even thriving. This period, we'll be looking at the labor's protest. Now it's been suspended. Labor is saying, okay, let's give the federal government a chance to do what it has promised. Labor leaders met with President Tinubu yesterday. We'll be looking at also Tinubu's economic policies on businesses. Don't also forget, just a few days ago, was it on Monday or so, that the president made a nationwide address, and in that address, they were, should I call it palliatives? Now, Nigerians don't like the word palliatives. In that address, we saw monetary incentives. Let me put it that way. Monetary incentives to our businesses. How is NECA taking all of this? NECA, which is the umbrella body for organized businesses in Nigeria. The DG of NECA joins me after the break.
Here is a new and refreshing offer.
right, welcome back to the program. Joining me right now is my guest. He's Adewale Oyeride, who is the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. That is NECA. So that's the meaning of NECA, N-E-C-A. Welcome to you, DG, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Good morning, viewers.
You're welcome. Now, let's get started. I read your statement or the press release from your organization. That was just a few days ago before Labour went on a protest. You enumerated some issues there. Now, taking that into perspective with what happened yesterday, there was a protest across the country. Labour leaders as well as the protesters went to the National Assembly. They also ended up seeing Mr. President yesterday as to Labour leaders. So what can you make of all of that vis-a-vis your statement earlier?
Well, thank you once again. Let's start from the beginning. Yeah, Labour's concern about the promises that the government made to them after the removal of the first subsidy, and there were engagements they had leading to the formation of a presidential committee or steering committee. And I think Labour's grouse was that the conversation that was held during this period, government reneged in implementing some of those things that they agreed on. which led to the issue of strike and protest. And our comment came up from the perspective of organized businesses. Earlier on you mentioned that except you are actually running a business in this environment, you probably will not understand the challenges that an average business owner is going through. And it's basically an issue of survival, not issue of competitiveness now. First, it's an issue of survival, then it's an issue of sustainability, then before you now move into the context of competitiveness. If you are not sustainable, then competitiveness is a mirage. So our position was based on the issue of the current state of organized businesses. We've been very challenged. For the past few years, it's been moving from one ditch to the other. Interest rate is going up. Forex is not available. Even when it was the dual foreign exchange rate, and we are for the 450 naira, the official, and over 600 for the black market. Hardly will the business still get the forex at that 450. So predominantly organized businesses are continuing to be faced with those challenges. And I want to use this opportunity to commend the resilience and doggedness of Nigerian businesses. Absolutely, you can't find that anywhere. So our comment was based on those facts that, look, we understand the issues that we have. The challenges is faced by all of us, by Nigerians, by workers, by businesses. And for organized businesses, it's a double-edged sword. One, you are faced with the challenge of inflation. The cost of funds, interest rate is increasing. So if I had borrowed ₦1 million at 12%, progressively, as the cost of funds, as interest rates continue to build up, it's affecting my cost of repayment. That is one. Secondly, as the purchasing power of an average Nigerian is reducing, their capacity to patronize the business, either goods or services, is also reducing, which invariably affects the business sustainability. So it's a two-edged sword for organized businesses. So while we understand those issues that Labour was agitated about, the factor of sustainability also come into play. Can we accommodate or survive with a strike or business closure at this point, where you are basically on oxygen? If a sick person is on oxygen, the worst thing you can do for him is to remove the oxygen for one day. Probably it will have gone to the great beyond before the oxygen is brought back. And that's our position, that we can't survive another strike. We can't survive another protest. And coming from our past experience, when a noble, purposeful protest then, NSAS, was hijacked, and businesses lost over 5 trillion naira. Those that lost investment, those that lost their property as organized businesses, for every other person after NSAS, life just continued, apart from those that we lost. But for those businesses, most of them are still smarting from how will they recover from those losses. So those were the foundation of our position, that whatever the context, whatever the reality that we currently face, which sometimes it could be unfortunate, but we must all take social dialogue as our first point of engagement. We must also take social dialogue as the second option in our engagement. And thirdly, we must also take social dialogue as the context of our engagement continuously. What transpired yesterday, thank God it was a peaceful protest. Significantly organized businesses were still operational yesterday. And we also thank God also that there was reasons prevailed yesterday. Government met our social partner, Labour, and the issue was there was also an agreement that was reached yesterday. And we just hope that implementation of those agreements will start immediately.
Okay, two things I want to ask from your answer. Now, you said you gave me the three options: social dialogue, social dialogue, social dialogue. But we've also seen Labour over the past few years or many years have engaged government on social dialogue, social dialogue, social dialogue, and yet the government does not there is that relationship between labor and government for government not to listen to what labor is saying. That is one. So how do you think, of course, with protest and the now suspended strike, how do you think that the government should be able to approach this? Since now that the labor has said, okay, we're shielding ourselves right now, let's listen to the government. That's one. Then the second issue that I will raise from your answer is the issue of businesses, because I also saw yesterday, for instance, and you also mentioned it, many businesses did not listen to labor, and they went around doing their businesses. What does that really say? Is it that businesses do not trust labor enough again, or are listening to them to say, pull down your tools, and businesses did not listen to them? Of course, I understand that private sector, of course, they would open their shops or their doors.
No, the first question about how government should approach, I think it's all about all of us being responsible and accountable within the context of the role that either faith or the role that we have accepted to take. Government remains the sovereign, and it's expected that when government is making commitment, it should, the minimum that is expected is that it should live up to those commitments. That is the minimum. And probably for all of us as social partners, maybe what we'll probably look at is to re-strategize on how we engage, how we go about our social dialogue. Yesterday, what happened between Labour and government in the evening with the president was the social dialogue. They still met and discussed. So why didn't we arrive at that point? Do we have to go through the route of the strike or the threats?
But was that the fault of Labour?
It wasn't the fault of Labour. It wasn't the fault of Labour.
Perhaps President Tinubu saw that if I don't engage these guys personally, things might get out of hand, because his officials have been engaging with them. So he took it.
Why do we have to wait up to that point? And that's why I was saying government have to take responsibility. Before now, past government, we've had the issue of government initiated agreements, initiated conversations with labor, initiated conversation with other stakeholders, and blatantly refused to implement those agreements. Those are inappropriate from our context. And those are the seasons that we believe has passed us by. So starting this process, we expect government with this new direction now, that we don't have to get into the issue of strike, get into the issue of threats before government will do what is expected of it. That labor will do what is expected of it. From our part, one of the things we preach is responsible enterprises. That as employers, we'll be responsible to our obligation to government in the context of tax, responsible to the workers within the context of welfare and salary payment, responsible to stakeholders within the context of corporate social responsibility. So if we can live up to that mantra of responsible enterprises, then there is no reason why every other person should not adopt that mantra. Look, whatever we are doing, first we must be responsible within the context of operationalization of everything that we do. So for us, is that perspective. Now the second question about organized businesses operated in spite of labor's call. It is less of an issue of trust, but it is more of an issue of survival. If you are an MSME, a small business owner, that you survive on a daily basis. You survive through what you sell on a daily basis. And there is a noble cause that might compel you to shut down your business. And the reality of shutting down your business for a day, the consequences is that you probably might suffer significant loss. So it is less of trusting the person that called you out to come and join in the protest. It is more of your survival instinct coming up to say, look, in the balance of probability, and within the material time of now, this is my priority. This is my objective. Labour had its main objective of going on strike, of calling the strike, of calling the citizens out for protest, and significantly, they probably have achieved most of those objectives. That's probably why they agreed that, okay, within the context of what we want to do, government has considered to A, B, C, D, E. Yes, within the context of our objective, yes, we have achieved this. So that becomes a reason for us to suspend or to postpone the strike. Every stakeholder we also get to that point and assess, for my objective as a business owner, the first objective is enterprise sustainability. Because if enterprise is not sustainable, if my investments should go out, if I go on strike or I join the populace, my interest rate, my repayment terms with the banks will not be suspended. The commitment I've made to other stakeholders, it will not be suspended. So after going on those noble cause, as we call it, when I come back, I'll still have to face those responsibilities. My responsibility to FRS in context of tax will still remain. I'll still have to remit pension for employees. I'll still have to remit 1% of my payroll to NSITF for social insurance transfer, social insurance for the employees. I still have to, my stakeholders in the community will still expect me to support in the context of building roads, providing water for the community. So those responsibilities, they won't be suspended. They run. So looking at it objectively, then look, what is the best for me in this material time? Should I close shop or should I continue operations while I join that is strike or the protest in spirit?
So perhaps it's like a chicken and egg situation in the sense that because what Labour is also canvassing for would directly also
affect everybody,
affect everybody and even businesses. Because if Labour can get what he wants to get, perhaps the cost of doing business would also reduce. Your cost of production and all of that
it's possible. It's possible. Yeah.
Will reduce. All right, let's talk about President Tinubu's broadcast. I want to believe that you listened to him or you read.
We did listen.
Yes, you read his statement. Yeah. So what can you make of it? Because there were a lot of monetary incentives, let me put it that way, because the word palliatives have been so bastardized, and I don't know if it's actually, we saw what happened during COVID-19. So monetary incentives, as it were, to be able to wriggle out of this economic hardship that is being exacerbated by fuel subsidy removal and all of that. So what's let me get your sentiment. I haven't spoken with you, so let me get your sentiment on the broadcast first.
It's if you permit me to use the analogy of a sick person that needed blood. The hospital had called that they found blood in the general hospital in Kano. So that probably gives you some excitement. Yeah, they found blood in Kano. Yes.
So there needs to be a transfusion.
They need to transport the blood first from Kano to Abuja. Then they start transfusion. So the president has announced graciously, beautiful address. It's comforting. People have divergent opinion about it, but we feel he has made some very bold pronouncements, so that there's blood coming to resuscitate the industry, to support certain sectors in the economy. But what we ask for, moving forward, is the vehicles, the ambulance that will bring the blood to those that needs it. And that is where we talk about the structure, the structural framework that will help to distill those interventions.
So what you're saying, in essence, is that there was no clarity from the president as to how those incentives will be disbursed.
There is no how first,
yes,
and then the personnel that will champion it. Let me give you an instance. The support to manufacturing.
75 billion.
75 billion to 75 organizations. Beautiful, because we believe until you pick the nexus between one policy and the consequences for others, if you invest in a strategic manufacturing business, it has the potential to drag the businesses in its value chain out of the quagmire. So once you strategically pick a business and you take deep look at what are the consequences of supporting this, there may be 10, 15, 20 sub-businesses that fit that business. So as you empower that business, you are also empowering the ability of many others to come out of it. That is beautiful. But for that to happen, you probably will need a Minister of Trade and Investment to midwife that. All of us won't be going to the presidency. We won't be going to Aso Rock. So the manufacturing sector or the business sector or the trade sector we need the Minister for Trade and Investment to interact with. The 3,000 buses that has been promised, good intervention, but you also need the Minister for either transportation or whatever I want to call it to midwife that process. For the increase in wages, wage adjustment that was mentioned, the national minimum wage that was mentioned, you need the Minister of Labour and Employment, or whatever name we call the ministry, to midwife that. Same for all the other interventions. Without those structures, thank God the Senate is screening the ministers currently, but we need those structures. And that's the context of immediate implementation that we spoke about. Those that have been cleared, we need the president to magnanimously give them their ministry, let them, not just give them their ministries, give round pegs or put round pegs in round holes and let them start the process of implementation immediately. That is when the blood can
come through the
ambulance and get to the hospital quickly enough.
So to ensure transfusion,
we need the
Tinubu's guys, men and ladies have to be at work.
They have to be at work.
So that means that we're expecting implementation when the ministers have been given their portfolios.
Most likely. Because with the current structure, who's going to implement? We have advisors. We have permanent secretaries. Some permanent secretaries have actually been doing some yeoman's job. But for them to work effectively, you need those overhead structures, those ministers, those if they're going to be minister of state, whatever I want to, but we need those structures. That is when the engine of government, that's how we can say the engine of government is actually running. Because the president currently has advisors, very limited advisors, and all of us, both in manufacturing, both in transport, both in oil and gas, all of us can be, we all can be running to Aso Rock at the same time, speaking to the same persons that are not probably not experts in those divergent areas, and that's why those structures of implementation are quite important.
So what do you think about the 75 businesses that will be getting 1 billion naira each? I want to assume that the category of businesses will fall within the purview of businesses within your umbrella body. 75 billion naira, 1 billion naira each.
Each of them at 9%.
Yes, at 9%. So what are you and your colleagues, what are the CEOs of those businesses under you since the address? What have you all been saying? Is that going to be a lobby to be able to get the 1 billion naira? And what would you advise government at this time to do? How will they even pick that it will not be businesses that are owned by friends of the president? But you said something which is very important, that in choosing those businesses, you need to also choose businesses that can affect their value chain, that even those that did not get 1 billion, it would definitely trickle down. So how should these businesses be chosen?
Now, in the past,
unbiased, yes. I'm not talking about your businesses under you.
in the past, part of the issues we've had with government is, and the CBN came up with so many interventions the last time.
Yes,
the governments of the past also came up with even the social interventions, the cash transfers. And one of our concerns has been this: how do you arrive at the businesses that benefited from the CBN's intervention? We've had session where the CBN was present, representative of CBN, and they were lamenting the issue of unpaid loans, the quantum and level of loan default from those that collected those, that benefited from those interventions. And the position of the organized private sector then was this, and that's remained our position, that look, how did you arrive at those that you picked? Was there any institutional arrangements or coordinated framework that helped you to pick those businesses? Till today, we've not been able to get an answer. Because at the organized private sector level, we have NECA, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, we have Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, we have National Association of Chambers of Commerce, that's NASIMA. We have NASME, that's National Association of Small-Scale Enterprises. And we have NASI, National Association of Small-Scale Industrialists, forming what we have as the organized private sector of Nigeria. So whatever size of the business finds a place in that group. Now, if you want to pick objectively, it is most likely that you will have picked within those members that are within that circle, because we know those that are doing businesses. We know those that are responsibly, not round tripping, responsibly doing businesses. So if you go through that route, then the chances of picking the right businesses is very high. If you go outside the regulated circle or the focused circle, then you have opened up the whole scheme to what you call giving business, giving my friends or our friends, our colleagues, giving their businesses, that is giving them palliatives indeed, not interventions. Because we'll have just picked people, give them money, then they run into, because they don't have structures that actually runs a business, probably portfolio directors, portfolio MDs, and you give them that kind of money. Then they do what they want to do with it that will not impact the economy. So we urge the president that the criteria for picking should be transparent. Nigeria is not a cult. We are not running a cult. So let the process be transparent. It's in the transparency of those policies, of those engagements, that is where you can build national consensus. Because we know at the beginning that it is us. We agreed this. But the moment you do it, in a clandestine way, that nobody knows the criteria, nobody knows the framework that was, then you've opened that process to skepticism from the beginning. And once people are skeptical about a process, then the issue of trust will naturally come in, which also impinges on the integrity of whatever you are trying to do. So openness, consultation, engagement with organized businesses is very fundamental to make that process, that intervention successful. Okay,
let's go back to the issue of labor. And what part of the demands that labor is making is an upward adjustment of wages. I don't know how your organization is taking that, though I've read a few things that you had said previously on minimum wage. In terms of a living wage for businesses, there should be ability to pay. Are you still standing on that? Because labor, from their earlier demands, have requested that the government upwardly adjusts wages to 200,000 naira a day. I don't know if an organized private sector can match that up, or even supersede that. The beauty of this process is that government is also an employer. And is labor's wage justified? Absolutely. By the way, I'm an employee too. I'm a worker myself. So the demand of labor justified. So you will like upward adjustment. You will like your salary to increase. I will mind my employer to make an upward adjustment for mine. You will like. I will like. Okay. Yeah. Now, going back to the core of the issue is labor's demand justified? Absolutely. Because the economic situation has eroded the salary of an average individual, and that is the reality. Then decisions that we have taken also, naturally has also exacerbated those issues. We remove fuel subsidy, and removal of fuel subsidy has come with its consequences. Transport has gone up, food has gone up, so many things has gone up, which has left those with fixed income at the receiving end. Now, the way to address it is what Labour has asked for, an adjustment. It's not minimum wage now, an adjustment in the salaries of workers, and which is within the context of their right to engage the employers, the employer as government. So it's now for government to look at is the reality on ground. Can the revenue match the expenditure? If your revenue, and for me, it's simple economics, if your revenue cannot match your expenditure, you are probably running at a loss, which will make the business unproductive and unsustainable. And same for organized private sector. Currently, at the organized private sector level, while the minimum wage, national minimum wage is 30,000, at the organized private sector level, we don't pay 30,000. Because at the organized private sector level, the collective bargaining comes up after every 2 years.
So at every 2 years, there is an award, there is regulation of wages, of condition of services. So progressively, while the national minimum wage is set every 5 years, organized private sector consistently has been upping wages, either through the instrumentality of performance appraisal every year, or through that mechanism for the unionized environment, through that mechanism of collective bargaining. So the private sector is significantly paying far ahead, or is far ahead of government in the context of payment of national minimum wage, and also in the context of wage.
Is the private sector paying living wage? Because that's even the issue. No, living wage is where we should be. In other climes, it's about living wage. So are you and your members paying living wage?
Living wage is contentious.
Minimum wage.
Living wage is contentious.
Why is it contentious?
How do you arrive at living wage? What are the parameters that will give you the impression that this is actually a minimum? Even at the international level, at the International Labour Organization level.
I'm trying to understand what you mean, that living wage is contentious.
No, what do you arrive? What will you call a living wage? What figure will you put?
Are you saying an exact figure?
Yes, an exact figure to put at a living wage. Because for a wage, just like the minimum wage issue, national minimum wage, there are processes, there are parameters that you bring to the table for you to arrive. It's just like you're cooking a stew. You must factor in every ingredient, and within the context of the wage, you look at the inflation rate, you look at the business itself, the sector which is operating, you look at the ability of the business to pay, you look at the productivity level. So you bring all those parameters to play to arrive at a wage. For the minimum wage, those parameters are already established. So for the living wage, living wage is a concept that we are just bringing in, that we're just adopting. So for the living wage, we also have to agree, because your definition of a living wage might be different from mine currently. If you call 5-10 people to the table now, and everybody should explain their understanding of living wage, there will probably have 10 different explanations of living wage.
No, but I think it will still revolve around maintaining the standards of living, that whatever
Absolutely.
I take home should be able to afford me food,
take you home.
Yes, and all of that. That's it. I don't think the concept of it should be lost on us. Because where we are right now, minimum wage is not taking people home.
I agree.
So where we should strive to go to is living wage,
where we should strive to go.
In fact, what we should be doing, because other climes are doing it, as it were.
No,
if we're actually a serious and responsive country, we should move from minimum wage to living wage, whereby every Nigerian at the end of the month can say, this money that I have made should be able to take me home, it should be able to provide food, provide shelter, and perhaps even move me anything I also want to achieve. I should be able to achieve that.
Which kind of food now? Which kind of, because, very importantly, what we must not lose sight of is this. You enjoy sparkling water. Me, I'm just fine with still water. So for you to survive, to feel okay, you must take sparkling.
I don't enjoy sparkling water, DG.
So you must take...
I like still water.
So now, in the context of living wage, my view will be, look, for me to be okay, to be seen as actually living, I must get sparkling water. For you, you must get still water. For some other person, look, just give me pure water. It's just fine. So how do we agree? How do we harmonize those three contexts?
But as you go higher now, in public service, you have ranks now, isn't it?
It's fine.
So as you will cut your coat according to your cloth. If it's pure water, you are able, or sachet water, whatever it is, you are able to afford. There should be a living wage around that your level. When you move to the next level, there's a living wage around that level.
That
should make you know that, okay, I want to get bottled water.
That is the framework. That is the framework that we have to set. Because all the concepts that we have now, you must fix them into something that becomes generally acceptable, so that anywhere you go, in Lagos, in Kano, in Abuja, we all have that understanding that when you call living wage, the context to me as employer here, the context to government as an employer at the federal government level, the context to the state government, the context to the local government workers, the same will be living wage. We all have that equal understanding of what it is. Look at the national minimum.
So are you saying that private sector, organized private sector, is already paying living wage? Is that what? Or you've gone above minimum wage? You've not gotten to living wage.
We've gone above minimum wage,
but you've not gotten to
approaching
living wage.
And it's also, the context also have to be clear, because the more you pay, if the macroeconomic situation, that's inflation rate, if you are not curtailing it, so the more you pay, the more inflation increases, the more it neutralizes those increases. So it's not really about the wage now. I think what we should focus on is creating an environment that is productive, an environment that the naira is strong enough, an environment where productive activities, manufacturing, decent work is holding sway. I think those are the key, because those will trickle down to issue of wages.
So strengthening the naira, really.
Strengthening the naira, strengthening the economy, and strengthening our production capacity as a nation. Those are the things that will... if I can buy a bottle of... years ago, a Benz, a Mercedes Benz is costing probably less than 10,000 naira. Then it's somebody earning 1,000 naira per month. Can buy it. That was the factor, because the economy was good. The economy was okay. So it has affected the value of the naira and the value of the quantum of what an average person is taking home. So the focus for all of us is, look, how do we get this economy back on track?
Okay. DJ, I can't let you go without speaking about productivity, which you've talked about, how organized private sector is dealing with the issue of productivity. I was speaking with someone on activity has really gone to the dogs right now in Nigeria in terms of, I want to know how employers are handling activity in their workplaces. That's one. The second part I also want you to speak about is the issue of this Japa syndrome, the corporate migration that we're seeing for organizations under you. For example, there's an exodus of people leaving Nigeria every day, and it seems that the people that are here, if they have their chance, they will want to leave. But the people that are really here now are people that, when you have them as an employer, you are just begging God day by day. You see a lot of shenanigans around Nigerian employees. So how are you all dealing with this?
Productivity. First, let's confess that one of the most hardworking persons in this that you can find anywhere are Nigerians. Once the environment is right, once the environment is good, then it becomes very, very easy for to get the best out of Nigerians. We have them here, we have them everywhere. But sometimes circumstances beyond your control creates a situation that makes productivity quite difficult. But at the private sector level, we know employers are doing all their best to create that environment that engenders productivity, that gives an employee, that makes an employee happy coming to work. Yeah, there will be one or two employers that are out of that scope, and as I mentioned earlier, we preach responsible enterprises in NECA, and we have urged all our members to align with that mantra of responsible enterprises to their employees and to all stakeholders. The issue of JAPA is no more the employees that are JAPAing now. Corporate organizations too are also migrating because of the inhospitable business environment. As at Monday, I still had a conversation with a member company. They've been here for 25 years, and by the end of this year, they will complete their process of shutting down operations in Nigeria.
They've been here for 25
years. But because of the environment...
And you don't want to say the company.
Has not been... I probably will do for data protection reasons. That will be so they'll be going out by the end of this year. Now imagine...
Is it an indigenous company?
It's a foreign company with a strong indigenous presence. Now, once they leave, they have over 5,000 employees. You realize that the 5,000 employees will most likely go out of jobs. If each of those employees have a child age, we have compromised the ability of the man to pay the school fees of those children. We have compromised the ability of the man to pay the house rent. We have compromised the ability of the woman that the family buys product from. We have compromised the ability of that market woman to also ability to sell to those individuals. So for one person losing his job, you can see the consequences that we don't even see. We just assume just one person has lost his job. And for the business, the ability of government to even generate revenue has been compromised because the business will go. So it's worrisome, and we urge the government, we urge President Tinubu to take a critical look at the operating environment. For the employees that are jackpying, it's also worrisome to organize businesses. Because if you're 18, your best hands are leaving. And they're not only leaving, they are leaving to contribute to the economy of another nation. It gives a serious call for concern. While some will say, yes, they are leaving, we have high unemployment, that they are making way for others to come in. But the fundamental issue is this: our best hands are leaving, and Europe and America have created a scheme, because most of those countries they are having aging population now. So they've created a scheme to attract the best hands from Nigeria, from Africa, to come and help them to develop their nation. And those and many others are part of the key concerns that we have. It is not funny, because it also creates an avenue where you now have to train and retrain others, which also increases your cost of production or cost of operation as a whole. So we just hope the government will take a very critical look at all those issues, so that we can get this country back on the trajectory of growth.
Okay, 2 minutes, 3 questions. How is the organization looking at the issue of casualization, employee casualization?
We're against casualization. We don't support casualization. We absolutely support decent work as promoted by the ILO. Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, are you worried also that some of your businesses, some of the organized businesses under your arm, especially those in consumer goods, are you worried that many of them are getting into sachetization? Sachet. There's sachet. What are people know as sachet? Like they are producing their goods now in sachets.
It's a survival strategy. It's survival instinct. The moment the consumer cannot offtake, because it's all about the consumer. The moment the consumer cannot offtake that quantity that you used to sell, you must find a way to meet the needs.
Because the purchasing power has down.
Dropped. So you must create a platform where those that couldn't buy at that level, you must create a platform where you can also meet their needs. Yeah.
Okay, lastly, what do you think about the ministerial list? Is NECA impressed with the quality of people on President Tinubu's list? You've actually mentioned like a trade and investment minister. I also do think that perhaps when there's a cabinet in place, the minister should, perhaps trade and investment, look at even the exodus of companies leaving that want to leave, such as what you said, and call them to the table and see what we can do. So what do you think about the ministers, very quickly?
Yeah, we've seen the list, some technocrats, some politicians, some individuals that have demonstrated competence in their past life. And the best we can say is this: the organized private sector will engage. Organized private sector will engage constructively, will ask questions, will raise issues where we need to raise issues, and we are open to provide policy options for government and all the ministers by the time they come in. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the elaborate discussion.
Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Adewale Oyeride, who is the Director General of NECA, that is the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, and we've been talking about issues around Nigerian economy and businesses in Nigeria. Thank you all for being a part of the show today. Please join me again tomorrow for the Friday edition, I guess. I'll see you all. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see by now.